Greetings, YouTube. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Pathfinder book, Occult Adventures. Now, this is a different thematic idea for Pathfinder. Pathfinder, the base core game, is essentially high fantasy, just like D&D is, which is fine, which is awesome. You got powerful wizards and incredibly strong clerics and mighty warriors and thieves that can run through a crowded room and no one ever sees them. It's high fantasy, lots of wushu monks and just druids turning into dire bears and stuff like that, which is awesome if that's what you want. But if you don't want that, if you want more universal pictures, hammer pictures, Transylvania with its haunted castles and mysterious villages. You want Innsmouth. You want those kinds of things. That doesn't really work well for high fantasy. It's just the wrong thematic narrative. It just doesn't cut it. So Occult Adventures is trying to fill that niche. Now, as opposed to Nietzsche, which is an entirely different thing. Now, it's been about a month since I finished reading this, so I'm just going to kind of flip through this and use it as my reference notes. And one of the first things you're going to be hit with is psychic magic. Now, psychic magic is Pathfinder's in-house retooling of psychic powers, as opposed to the third-party publisher of Dreamscarred Press, which frankly produced the best spell point system that has ever been done for D&D. Their psionic rules are unbelievably good. I have always waxed poetic about them, and I will continue to do so. However, they are also high fantasy. So, wanting to pull that back so that it fits into the occult genre that I just described more effectively, they've created psychic magic, which is heavily inspired by the first edition psionic rules that existed decades ago. And they've kind of brought that back into Pathfinder. And the psychic magic doesn't use semantic, verbal, and material components as much as it uses emotional and intellectual components. So spells are from the mind as opposed to drawing power from the world around you or from a god. Not saying that those other types of magic cannot also exist in this world, but I think you'd really want to be careful about which classes you allowed in your game. I think much more appropriate for partial casting classes, ones that maybe going to go to 5th or 6th level as opposed to full casting classes. And you still might want to put some governors on those classes so you don't have them throwing things out of balance. Because again, the occult genre is a little more delicately balanced than the high fantasy is. So that right there is one of the major shifts in the game. Now, then we get into the core classes that they have introduced for this setting. And the first is the Kineticist, which is all about drawing elemental power or channeling elemental power through the character and into the world at large. Have you ever wanted to play an airbender or a waterbender or a firebender? Here you go. This is the class you want, because that's exactly what this is. I started to read it, and I really didn't know much about it. I started to read it, and I just started to laugh. I'm like, this is awesome. And they have lots of powers, of course, because, Pathfinders like that. And you also have lots of archetypes which help you tailor your kineticist the way you want to play. And you have infusions which help power your abilities and give you new capacities as you gain in levels. So this combination of pure, almost warlock-like abilities, along with some more utilitarian magical abilities, helps balance the class out and really make it function as a solid contender in your campaign. But again, it's not high fantasy. I'm not sure how this would work in a standard high fantasy game. I think it is very appropriate for people who want a more narrowly focused character. I mean, Warlocks function in 3.5 just fine, um, and I think they could still function in Pathfinder if you tweak them a little bit. Um, Someone once suggested uh, making warlocks a full caster class, not a full caster, but a partial caster class. I didn't like the idea. I did like the idea of giving them cantrips, though. I think that's very appropriate for some nice utilitarian stuff. And there's a whole lot of stuff in here about uh, kineticists. So, I mean, again, lots of powers, lots of abilities. I'm not going to cover them all. The point is that if you have an idea in your head of how you have always wanted to play a firebender, you will find something in here that will really tailor it to your desires. Then we have the medium. A medium channels spirits into themselves, using their own bodies as vessels for astral entities spawned from myths and legends. A medium balances his need for the spirit's power with the danger of allowing such beings influence over his mind. And there is a danger. If you push yourself too hard, you can be hijacked by the spirit that you were attempting to control, and they can take you over, temporarily at least. Um, so there's a danger there, and I kind of like that. I kind of like the vibe they gave this, in that you didn't always know if you were going to have complete control of the situation at hand, which I really think, again, fits that horror occult vibe really well. That magic is not 100% predictable. There are costs. When you're a kineticist, you can hurt yourself by pushing your powers too hard. If you're a medium, you can run the risk of being taken over by the spirit that you have summoned. Magic has dangers. So I'm completely in support of that idea. I think it's kind of cool. And the mediums are a 4-level caster class. So again, a partial caster class, and I think that's very appropriate for this type of setting. And again, lots of abilities in here that are very much going to meet what you want. Then we have the mesmerists, experts at charm and deceit. Mesmerists compel others to heed their words and bend their will. So this is very much about playing Rasputin, playing the original mesmerists as they were viewed in the 18th and 19th centuries, of Svengali-like characters that could like stare into your eyes and take over your mind, read your thoughts. And again, really fits the occult vibe very well. And this is also a partial class. They go all the way up to 6th level abilities. And a lot of these powers are eye-based. So you stare into someone's eyes and you can take them over, or negatively influence them at least, if not necessarily taking them over. Then we have the occultist. And the occultist focuses on the world around him, grounded in the power that flows throughout his environment. He studies the magic that influences everything from psychic resonances left in everyday items to powerful incantations that fuel the mightiest spells. The occultist channels these psychic power might through implements, items that allow him to focus his power and produce incredible effects. For him, implements are more than simple tools. They are repositories of history and a tie to the events of the past. So this is the character that has lots of charms and lots of mementos on them, because those charms and mementos are the focus for their power. They are the locusts that they bring in and that help them tap into the magic of the world. And that's, again, very thematic for this type of a setting. This is also a 6th level caster class. And the items can be worn items, could be weapons, could be a shield, and the item can itself have a utilitarian purpose beyond its focus, but it's also a focus for the occultist power or a particular ability that they have. No one item is a focus for everything. There's going to be different items for different abilities, and I think that's very appropriate. And it really kind of harkens back to an earlier take on magical concepts. It makes me think of the medicine bag in some regards. So yeah, Really good idea. And of course, they have the huge spell list in here. Then we get into the pure psychic, the actual class which is attached to the magical tradition that has been introduced in this book. Within the line of any sentient being lies power to revival that of the greatest magical artifacts or holy site. Hint, hint. They're trying to say that, this is a separate ability beyond arcane and divine, but of equal value. By accessing this staggering vaults of mental energy, Psychic can shape the world around her, the minds of others, and pathways across the planes. No place or idea is too secret or remote for a Psychic to access, and they can pull from every type of psychic magic. Many methods allow Psychics to tap into mental abilities and the disciplines they follow after affect their ability. So again, this is somewhat harkening back to the Scion class, where you have a tradition that you follow. So you're a specific type of psychic as opposed to just a general psychic. And this is a full range class with abilities all the way up to 9th level. So this is your wizard, sorcerer step replacement. And again, very much fitting into the whole occult concept. And you have psychic disciplines, the abomination, dreams, faith, lore, pain, psychedelia, rapport, self-perfection, monk-like, tranquility. And then you have your list of psychic spells. And again, because you can do this, you're really getting a chance to emulate some of the other classes that come from the core Pathfinder game, which is kind of a cool concept. Then we get to the spiritualist. Becoming a spiritualist is not a calling, it is a phenomenon. When a creature dies, its spirit flees its body and begins the next stage of its existence. Debilitating emotional attachments during life and other psychic corruptions cause some spirits to drift into the ethereal plane and descend toward the negative energy plane. Some of these spirits are able to escape the pull of undeath and make their way back to the material plane, seeking refuge in a psychically attuned mind. Such a fusion of consciousness creates a spiritualist, the master of a single powerful phantom who the spiritualist can manifest to do her bidding. So you have a spirit that you call into yourself, or have so you have certain powers that way, or you just summon them to work, come alongside you. So it's somewhat similar to the summoner class that is in the core Pathfinder game, but it's also slightly different. And again, very appropriate and great. I mean, just wonderful illustrations. This wizened woman and this giant warrior next to her. The illustrations in this book, by the way, are top notch. I was quite impressed. And the powers on the spiritualist class go up to 6th level. So again, it's a 2/3 caster class. And again, because they have other utilitarian and offensive and defensive abilities because of their summoned phantom, that all balances out, which is just ducky. And again, lots and lots of abilities in here, and you can attach different spirits can have different emotional states, and those emotional states are kind of like the traditions that you saw in the psychic class. So again, you can have a phantom that really suits your style of play. It's not just a generic racial favorite class options, and that's not a surprise. Then we get into archetypes. Some of the kineticist archetypes, the blood kineticists. Ever wonder why a waterbender didn't just summon the blood out of someone because that's liquid? Guess what you can do? The Elemental Annihilator, which is specializing in pure elemental power. Elemental Aesthetic, which is, again, monk-like. The Kinetic Chirurgeon, which is about healing and things like that. Overwhelming Soul, which is about... some kineticists have a powerful personality that can seize control of their element with their minds alone without endangering their bodies. This is charisma-based instead of constitution-based. Interestingly, the kineticist is a constitution-based class, which is very interesting, which means dwarves make awesome kineticists, and I really like that idea. The idea of a dwarven or earthbender is cool beyond all measure. Then we get into medium, the kami medium. So you're pulling in some Japanese themes in there. The reanimated medium, which is you died, and then your own spirit haunts your body. That's awesome. The relic channeler, which is about channeling artifacts. The spirit dancer, the storyteller archetype, which is kind of cool if you want to play something like a bard-like character that's powers come from telling stories. I like that idea. Then we get into the mesmerist. We have the cult master, which is perfect. Makes me think again. Let me think of Rasputin. The spirit walker, the toxictician. Toxictician, yeah. Forgoes the mesmerist's stare, instead combining their psychic power with their alchemical knowledge to craft injections that torment their foes and bolster themselves and their allies. That's just cool. We have the vexing daredevil. Vexing daredevils train their psychic powers for combat, specializing in momentary blinding and confusing their foes with sudden feints and attacks, which is also great if you want to play more of a martial character, without wanting to play it, a straight up fighter of some variety. Then we get into the cultists. We have the battle host, the necro occultists. So these, oh yeah, look at that image, man. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that just beautiful? I just eat this kind of stuff up. We have the Sha'ir archetype, tapping into the Arabic myths and legends. We have the tome eater, which actually requires eating books and scrolls, which really rubs me the wrong way, but I think it's still a cool idea. Then we get into the psychic, which is the amnesiac, which you've forgotten who you are. The formless adept, which means you slowly cease to be physical, become a pure psychic being. The mutation mind. Exposure to unintended spell effects, curses, or sources of radiation cause some to manifest psychic powers. When a mutant mind uses her psychic abilities, her physical body changes under the stress, and she risks losing control if she pushes too far. Awesome idea. Literally changing your body's warping and mutating as you're using your powers. Again, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Psychic duelist. We get into the spiritualists, the ectoplasmatists. Instead of calling upon a phantom from the ethereal plane, an ectoplasmatist infuses herself with the mysterious substances called ectoplasm. So you're summoning ectoplasm into your body to make yourself powerful. And we have the fractured mind. Most spirits harbor spirits of the deceased in their psyches, but a small number of them, known as fractured minds, draw their powers instead from a fraction of their own souls that resonates with extremely powerful emotions. We have the Geist channeler. Some phantoms retain less of their spirit personalities and memories than others, though most phantoms maintain some semblance of their former selves. Others of their kind, known as Geists, come close to being lost forever before they became phantoms, incapable of manifesting in ectoplasmic form and devoid of human emotions. These strange entities are much closer to ghosts than most other phantoms, which is again a nice little change of an idea. We have the haunted, we have the onmyojai, which I'm pronouncing horribly. It's Japanese. Though most spiritualists are considered by the phantoms, others deliberately call phantoms through years of careful preparation and studying obscure divine traditions. Those spiritualists known as onmyojais form close bonds with the phantoms as other spiritualist does, see the phantom as partners and tools in their work, which is again a slightly different take on the idea. Then we have other class ideas in here. We have the Promethean disciple, which is an alchemist discovery, the ectochemist, alchemical, the Promethean alchemist, again a chemical, the flesh eater, barbarian type, that's phrenologists, the bard archetype. You can feel bumps on people's heads. The silver balladeer, the Order of the Eastern Star, cavalier, Order of the Shroud, again cavalier, ghost rider, cavalier. I wonder if your head burns in flames and you get a motorcycle. The sensate fighter archetype, the relic hunter, inquisitor archetypes, Indiana Jones, the psychic detective, investigator archetype, The esoteric magus archetype, the mind blade magus archetype, the karmic monk archetype, ghost hunter paladin, the escapologist rogue. I have a movie called that. The false medium, again rogue. But I gotta tell you, being a false medium in a world of actual psychic paranormal powers, when there are actual psychics and mediums and things like that in the world, doesn't sound smart. The ectoplasm, a sorcerer bloodline, psychic, another bloodline, witch patrons, lie guardian, a witch archetype. Then we get into, of course, 1,000,000,001 feats. One of the great things about Pathfinder is the options. One of the horrible things about Pathfinder is the options. Then we get into a list of different psychic spells that actually can be used by core classes, and of course the spell lists for the classes described here therein. Then you get a big section on spells themselves. Then you get into specific rules about how to use the occult abilities that have been discussed in the game. For occult skill unlocks, if you have automatic writing, which is a type of linguistic skill, dowsing, faith healing, hypnotism, phrenology, again, bumps, prognostication, awesome word, psychometry, read aura. Then we get into auras themselves, so you have something to work with. When we get into a chapter on chakras, which is a nice little intro to that concept if you've never been exposed to it before. When you get into psychic duels, which is all about fighting on the psychic plane, which makes me think a whole lot of the Marvel wizard, whose name is now escaped, Doctor Strange. Makes me think of Doctor Strange. Then we get into possession, being possessed, cult rituals. And again, which has a ritualist has a wonderfully occult and Cthulhu mythos kind of vibe. Then a chapter on running an occult campaign, because it is going to be distinctly different. Talk about occult locations, loci spirits, and in a world with lie lines, where they meet are powerful places of power for good or ill. Stuff about the mindscapes, about the psychic realms that can be touched upon by the characters. The esoteric planes, different the Akashic record, the boneyard, the outer spheres, and then occult rewards, which is all about magic items and things like that, which is also very cool. I happen to really enjoy the way Pathfinder lays out their magic items and their little illustrations of most magic items, which even if you just choose not to use them, at least gives you a nice jumping off point, table of contexts, and a index at the end. So both things I greatly appreciate. So if you're aiming to run a game that is more pulp, more, again, Universal Pictures, zombie, werewolves, and the Loch Ness Monster, not the Loch Ness Monster, the Monster from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, that kind of thing, or, the Hammer films, where you had numerous vampires and occult characters, and Edgar Allan Poe, and things like that. If that's what you're looking for, these occult rules are going to fit the bill, because all of those things I discussed, all those different inspirations, really don't fit the high fantasy vibe that is in the core Pathfinder rules or the core 3.5 rules. I can't tell you if that works for 5th edition. I don't know anything about either of those games, other than that I don't consider 4th to be D&D. Yes, I'm going to throw that little dig in there. My people seem to like 5th. More power to you. Game on. But this is one-stop shopping. Now, the one thing I have to say that I wasn't 100% thrilled with is it kind of seems to be cutting the legs out from under Dreamscarred Press. Because Dreamscarred Press did such an excellent job with psionic rules for Pathfinder. But on the other hand, those rules are high fantasy. And they really don't fit into the occult setting all that well. So cutting out the legs, it doesn't fit. Yeah, I get why they did it. It rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. So I feel like it was almost a slight to Dreamscard Press, which it probably isn't. They just realized that maybe they wanted their own psychic powers within the core Pathfinder game, and people can still use Dreamscard Press without problem if they want to add some things in. And I think, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the Warlock class from 3.5 would be perfectly acceptable in this kind of a setting, and people might even think it's a form of kineticist. Maybe you could make it a form of kineticist if you want to. If you'd like to tailor an archetype to that in that direction. So I've rambled on for far too long. I'm hoping that you're appreciating my thoughts on this. I think it's very well done. My applause and kudos to the team that did this. You did an excellent job, and I think you really helped capture the thematic vibe of the occult very well.